What if I told you that our constant search for safety, for stability, is actually making us weaker? We're about to dive into this really powerful idea from Nassim Nicholas Taleb called Antifragile. And I'm telling you, it might just change how you look at pretty much everything. So Taleb starts with this kind of mysterious quote. He's basically saying there's a huge gaping hole in our language, a fundamental property of the world that we've just never bothered to name. He calls it the interesting half of life. And trust me, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, what is this missing concept? Well, to get there, we first have to tackle this huge paradox of modern life, our obsession with making everything perfectly stable and predictable. I mean, really think about it. We spend so much energy trying to smooth out all the bumps in the road, right? To prevent every tiny little problem from happening. So why do our best laid plans so often blow up in our faces, leading to the exact kind of disaster we were trying to avoid in the first place? Okay, this analogy right here is the absolute key. We all know that our muscles get stronger from the stress of exercise. If you just lie in bed, they waste away. Taleb's big insight is that complex systems like the economy, nature, even our careers work the exact same way. When we try to remove all the little stressors, we're not making them safer, we're making them dangerously weak. And you see this pattern playing out everywhere. We suppress every small forest fire, thinking we're being responsible, but all we're doing is letting the flammable stuff pile up until one tiny spark creates a raging inferno. Or in the economy, we try to stabilize the market by preventing any small corrections. That just allows huge, hidden risks to build up under the surface until, bam, a massive crash. The very thing we do for safety becomes the source of our fragility. It's a trap. So, if trying to create perfect stability is actually making things fragile, what on earth is the alternative? This brings us to the big idea, the word we've been missing. Now, this is so important. If I asked you, what's the opposite of a fragile wine glass? You'd probably say something like a robust bowling ball. But think about it. The bowling ball just resists the shock. It stays the same. The true opposite would be something that when you drop it, it actually gets stronger. And here's the word antifragility. This is what we didn't have a name for. It's not about bouncing back to where you were. It's about getting hit with chaos, with stress, with randomness and failure, and using that energy to become better, stronger, and more capable than you were before. Taleb lays this all out in what he calls the triad. It's a super useful way to think about it. On one end, you have the fragile. Think of the sword of Damocles, just hanging by a thread, one shock away from total disaster. In the middle, you have the robust. That's like the phoenix. It can burn down and be reborn, but it just comes back the same. But then you have the antifragile. That's the Hydra from mythology. You cut off one of its heads and two grow back, stronger than before. It literally thrives on being attacked. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? A system that gets stronger from chaos. But where do you actually see this in the real world? Well, look no further than evolution. It's the ultimate anti-fragile system. Think about it. Any single organism is incredibly fragile. It lives, it dies. But every time an individual fails, every time it gets eaten or gets sick, the collective gene pool learns something. The stress and randomness weeds out the weak spots, and the overall code gets stronger, smarter, and more adapted. The system's strength is built on the failure of its individual parts. Here's a much more modern example, but it's the same principle. The sinking of the Titanic was an absolute tragedy for the people on board. It was horrific. But for the system of ocean travel, that one massive failure was an invaluable and maybe even necessary lesson. It forced everyone to completely rethink ship safety, leading to changes that have saved countless lives since. The larger system became anti-fragile because of one catastrophic fragile event. And I find this so fascinating. Taleb applies this same logic to the economy. He says entrepreneurs are basically modern-day heroes. Why? Because most of their businesses will fail. That one restaurant that goes under is a personal tragedy for the owner. But the restaurant industry as a whole learns from that failure. It learns what customers want, what business models work, and what don't. The whole ecosystem gets stronger because of the painful sacrifices of the individuals. Okay, so this is a really powerful way to see the world. But the big question is, how do we use this for ourselves? How do we actually live an anti-fragile life? This is the crucial shift in thinking. Stop trying to predict the future. It's a fool's game, and it makes you fragile. The anti-fragile way is to stop predicting and start preparing.
You want to build a life that can't be destroyed by a negative surprise, but is wide open to benefit from a positive one. And here's Taleb's practical strategy to do just that. It's called the barbell strategy. Instead of putting all your money or effort into some medium risk thing, you split it between two extremes. You put, say, 90% of your resources into something incredibly safe: cash, government bonds, things that can't blow up. Then you take that small remaining 10% and you go wild with it. You put it in super speculative, high risk, high reward ventures. This way, your downside is tiny. The worst you can lose is that 10%, but your upside is potentially unlimited. The key is to avoid that fragile middle ground where you're exposed to all the risk without any of the massive potential reward. And finally, there's this powerful mental tool he calls via negativa, which basically means the negative way, or knowledge through subtraction. The idea is so simple, but so profound. We are much, much better at knowing what is definitely wrong than what is definitely right. You know for a fact that smoking is bad for you. You don't know what the perfect diet is. So the smartest way to become stronger and less fragile isn't to add a bunch of complicated new habits. It's to relentlessly remove the things you know are hurting you. True wisdom comes from subtraction. So that really leaves us with the final question to ask ourselves. Take a look at your life, your health, your career, your finances. Where are you fragile? Where are you exposed to one single shock that could wipe you out? And maybe more importantly, where could you invite in a little more stress, a little more randomness, to not just survive the chaos of the world, but to actually get stronger from it?